Right. So, Karan, this point that both Sri and Saurabh made about the household spending rates, you agree with that? That's the way forward? I mean, India is after all a consumption-driven economy. It's internal, it's when consumers go out and buy, the economy grows.
Absolutely, Sandeep. So one narrative here is, of course, that that Indian households are, it's a typical middle income household
Yeah.
situation where households are consuming,
Yes.
they're getting into the market. The DII growth that we're looking at, the mutual fund growth, for example, that we're looking at right now, as well as the investments in real estate. Maybe they're buying cars.
Right.
So their financial savings are sort of coming down, but those savings should be sort of flowing back into the economy because ultimately what goes out of the balance sheet of the household will go to the balance sheet of the manufacturer or the business people.
Yeah.
So basically, net it's positive for both the sides. But you have to look at this from the perspective of rising loans in the non-collateralized category, personal
Yes.
loans.
Personal.
So if households are very positive about the future outlook of their income, at the same time they're also consuming,
Yeah.
then why is consumption as a proportion of real GDP declining? At the same time, why are households augmenting their incomes by taking personal loans, even though their financial capacity has declined significantly, as you're pointing
Right.
out? So there's a dichotomy here that we need to understand, and I think the government of India also needs to study why this is happening. When, as you rightly pointed out, Sandeep, India is a domestic demand-driven economy.
Yeah.
And if household financial capacity declines, then the consumption story basically falls on its back.
Right. And meanwhile, Sri, there's also this focus on those 4 pillars that the Prime Minister mentioned since November, and the government's going hell for leather, focusing on these 4 new castes, as they call it, the farmers, the youth, the poor, and women. Nari Shakti. What do you make of these 4 pillars in the budget? Is that the way forward in the next budget, if they come back to power?
I think this goes well beyond the budget, Sandeep, because Prime Minister Modi has identified these 4 segments as the most critical components of a developed nation.
Yes.
You know, so they are critical. You have to have farmers producing, you have to have women empower, bring women into employment, make them part of the workforce, youth has to be employed, and then obviously the poor have to be uplifted. Right. So these are the 4 metric or the 4 focus areas which, according to Prime Minister Modi and BJP's own plan, will determine whether India becomes a developed nation or not. And I think this is the right focus. I think it's time we moved away from caste-based discussions and all those things, you know, which have held us back for so many years. We need to redefine, you know, who are the new beneficiaries that need to be as we grow as a nation, and make sure that we are able to, like the Finance Minister talked about inclusive growth. So that is what I think every government needs to deliver. And once you target these 4 big segments, I think the job of inclusivity is easier done.
Right. And in fact, that's also, you know, flows from the Labharti politics that the BJP has practiced wonderfully in the last decade. Saurabh, this 4 pillars of the government's focus, that is just as we discussed, Nari Shakti, the farmers, the youth, and the below poverty line. How critical would this be, as they say, that is it QED? Focus on these 4 engines and you will reach developed nation status by 2047.
Well, theoretically, we have started calling ourselves Viksit Bharat.
Yes.
So we are somewhere there already. But yes, these 4 are needed in India. I mean, that's critical. You can't deny either of the 4. And the 5th one, if you look at the allocations in the budget, is defense. Given the geopolitics in the globe, that is the 5th critical area which I felt has been given a lot of focus. Now, coming back to the 4, see, government has been very consistent. Look at women, right from 15th August announcements, other announcements, making drone pilots out of women. Government has been very consistent. Look at agriculture, the whole agri stack, the kind of investment government is making. If you simply look at the number of tenders that have come out in technology in agriculture, they are mind-boggling. So, ditto for youth and ditto for poor. So if you look at holistically, this is nothing but a culmination of I wouldn't say promises, but the strategic directions the government took year and a half back.
Right.
Now they have to be the mainstay of our internal growth. And the good part is that if this is a precursor to the main budgets, assuming BJP comes back to the power, I
Yeah.
mean, this all is step in the right direction. And more so women. I mean, you can't deny the economic growth that women in India can bring to the country.
Yes.
They do already do great, but 50% of your population perhaps contributing more to the causes that can be numbered in your fiscal data. I mean, that is going to spur the next wave of truth and all the investments. And then the talk of this Kartavyakal.
Right.
I mean, Kartavyakal, while it might be a slogan, but Kartavyakal also brings in the need for bringing more investment, us like private sector,
right,
taking benefit of the schemes that the government have launched, make more investments in innovation, and take towards, if we do it for these four causes, I think it's all theoretically looking very sound. Of course, when the rubber hits the road, when the details come,
yes,
more will be seen.
Right. Theoretically looks very good, Sri. And in fact, the sweet spot would be a young woman farmer, below poverty line. That would be the ideal combination for this government. But, a couple of years back, I was speaking to this diplomat, and this is when the UPA was in power and seemed to be directionless. He said, I despair when I come to India because nobody seems to have a vision for the future. And the only people, he said this tongue-in-cheek, is the only people with a plan are the Maoists. They're saying that we're going to capture power by 2040 or 2050. But Karan, as an economist, how important is it for nations to lay out these, targets, these goals that, developed nation by 2047, third largest economy by 2030? How does it kind of spur the nation to move towards these goals? I mean, this is something that we've not seen in a long time. We are so used to these 5-year plans, first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan. How does this kind of bring in a new narrative, this 25-year plan?
So, Sandeep, taking your argument forward, I have to give it to the government, the current government, that budgets now are no longer run-of-the-mill annual affairs. They are vision documents.
Yes.
And I think if you look at the budget, the way it is presented, the kind of strategy that it is building, and this phenomena is sort of happening since 2015. That budgets are actually talking about visions and GDP thresholds, for example, $5 trillion, $10 trillion, and beyond.
Right.
So first and foremost, I am a believer in the India story, and it's pretty apparent. People are skeptical sometimes about petty thresholds like 5 trillion and 10 trillion. If you ask me, then it's almost a certainty that we will be a $20+ trillion economy by 2040. So I think it's very, very important to have a vision, and I think the current government is doing that pretty well. That they are sort of putting out that vision, that where they want to be and what India should be doing in order to attain those targets. So if you look at any country, if you look at China, for example, when it was sort of coming out of its economic dismay in the early 1980s and sort of deregulating itself and opening its economy to the world and ultimately becoming this economic powerhouse and factor to the world. They were also sort of putting out a lot of vision statements and plans for 5-year, 10-year forward. So what we are doing today, what the government of India is doing today, is something very similar what the Chinese were doing back in the 1990s and early 2000s. So vision is very, very important, and I think that is something that the government is doing pretty well. And I think since we have, when we cross the $3 trillion threshold, I think then it became pretty apparent that we are moving in a certain direction, and Indian economy is a juggernaut, which is because that once it starts, it will be almost impossible to stop it.
Absolutely, and that's a very important point there, Karan, the fact that budget statements have become vision documents and vision statements, and telling you about the road ahead. But that's something that we'll have to look, because the first big objective that the government has to do is to get itself re-elected, and who knows, another 5 years and 5 years after that. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for this discussion on Budget 2024, the prudence and the confidence of the government as it embarks on its road to Viksit Bharat. Thank you very much, Sri,
Pleasure.
Saurabh and Karan, for joining us this evening on the 9 p.m. show. Thanks for watching.
News 9 Plus. Download now.